Hello everybody, it's me Dominic here with the 6th Quest devlog. In this video I'm going to be adding 2 new enemies, making some moving platforms, and finally finish making the tutorial after 3 months. And if you're new here, this game is about a knight that gets sent on a quest to find the King's Stolen Crown, and it seems like a quick and simple task at first, but it quickly turns into anything but that. Before I can actually start working on the tutorial, I have a couple of small features that I have to add. So let's go ahead and add those. So currently, whenever you hit an enemy, it plays a separate animation, and that's what makes the enemy flash. Now that works great whenever you have an enemy like the slime that only has 2 different states, but whenever you start getting into stuff like the mushroom that has 5 different animations, and you're working with an animation system notoriously horrible like Unity's built-in one, it quickly becomes a really big problem. So I figured I'd go ahead and find a solution for it so I wouldn't have to find one later. The first thing I thought I'd try would be changing the color to white in a script, kinda like I do with the player whenever you take damage. But it turns out Unity does colors a bit differently than, say, a sprite. In a sprite, to make a sprite white, you change the red, green, and blue values to 255. But in Unity, it doesn't account for the color it already is, so it just has it set at white by default. So that means you can't just change the color in Unity to make the whole sprite white. So after about an hour of searching, I finally found a Reddit thread that linked a post from 2015 that has a custom shader in it. So I yoinked that shader, then I went ahead and changed over all the enemies to enable that shader whenever they take damage instead of playing an animation. This is a lifesaver for the future whenever I'm making new enemies. And the cool thing about this system is I can also change how the flash looks, and it changes how the flash looks on all the enemies, which is really cool. So now that I'm done with that, I'm going to go ahead and move on and start working on the moving platforms. So whenever I started working on the moving platforms, I remembered that I made a game before with moving platforms, so I decided to open that project and totally not yoink the code from it. And to probably nobody's surprise, it did not work, because why would it? So the main problem that I was having was that whenever the player jumped on the platform, it would not let the player walk forward or backwards for some reason. So after an hour of fiddling with it, I finally got it to work correctly, but there was still one really big problem with it. And that problem with it is because it can only go between 2 points, when I want it to be able to go in between 2 and 4 points. So I tried several different systems on how to make it go between 4 points, but I could not figure out a proper way to do it. So I decided to resort to the janky way, and that is to have 100,000 if statements in my code. It's definitely not a perfect solution. In fact, it's actually a really janky one. But it works, and it has all the features that I needed, so I'm gonna call this one a win. Do you know what also is a giant win? You hitting that subscribe button, like button if you're liking the video. And also there's a demo link in the description if you want to try out the game for yourself. And back to the video. So I recently got together with a couple of my friends, and I decided to have them playtest Quest. And it turns out that almost every single person that has playtested Quest has had a problem with the attack being K and the dash being L. Now that would not be a problem if every single one of them did not have a completely different way that they would like the buttons to be binded. So it looks like I have 3 different options on how to solve this issue. Option 1. Add a key rebinding system. Option B. Tell them to deal with it because I'm the game developer and I know what's best for them. And option hamster. Pretend I cannot hear them over my raging tinnitus and continue working on the game. So I don't know if you know this, but currently whenever an enemy walks to the edge of a cliff, he just kind of walks off. So I decided one evening that I would make a version of the slime and mushroom that would not fall. I thought it'd be easy, put a collider here, whenever the collider exits the ground just flip the enemy. But it ended up being a huge pain in the butt and it took me a few hours to actually make it working, but hey, now it's working. Next I wanted to add a couple of new enemies so that I can finish up the tutorial. So the first enemy I want to be a mushroom that pops out of the ground. So whenever I was drawing him, everything went extremely smoothly and I actually enjoyed it quite a bit. Implementing him went extremely smoothly, which I'm quite surprised about. It actually only took about an hour. So here's this guy in action. Whenever you get too close to him, he'll become alert and there will be an exclamation point above his head. And if you proceed to get closer, he'll actually pop out of the ground, and then you can pretty much just proceed to jump over him and completely ignore him. And many of you are probably asking, what is the point of him? Well, the point of him is basically just to be a nuisance to the player.
But he's so easy to avoid.
Until I put him on a 3-tile platform and you have to work around him. Next, I started on the flower that shoots spores at you. When I was drawing him, I could not get it to look good for some reason. The best I could get it to look was like a lemon, which is not what I want. I wanted it to look like a flower, so naturally, when that did not work, I turned everything red, added some white lips, added some white circles, and I ended up making a mushroom plant. I don't know why, but for some reason this game seems to really like mushrooms. So now I'm going to give you a rundown on how he works. Similar to the ground mushroom, if you get too close he becomes alert, but this time if you get even closer he'll actually start to shoot at you. And you're probably saying, you can probably just jump over him and avoid him. No, you cannot, because if you jump he'll start shooting up in the air. So he's actually quite a difficult enemy to get around. Okay, now it's time to finish the tutorial and actually finish it after 4 freaking months of pain. So the first level you get dropped into, you will not have your iron sword or be able to dash. The reason I'm doing this is because I want the player to get the very basics down. So the basics are how high you can jump, how far you can jump, and how fast you can walk. Okay, when I was making the first level, I was trying to think of how to forcefully teach the player all those things I said before. So I started out with some simple things like having the players start in an empty room so they could get the basic movement figured out. Then you go to some basic jumps, and that's where you run into your first enemies. And the next thing is you go to your first moving platform. The rest of the level is pretty easy, so I'm not going to tell anymore to avoid spoilers. Also, there are some secrets in the level, so if you want to try it out, there's a demo link in the description. Also, I added some walls that you can destroy like a certain game with treasure behind them. The second level really isn't a level because you just run into this old man with a cart and he asks for some help. He tells you how to dash, chain dashes with bats, and also he has a small conversation with you. Also, what do you think of this bridge? I don't know how I feel about it, so leave a comment below of what you think of it. Now the next level you're able to dash, so I added a ton of new obstacles for you to get around, and this one was actually really fun to make. One of the obstacles is that you have to jump off a moving platform and dash into a bat to get to safety. Another one is you have to chain your dash 3 times to get across this pit of death. And the last one I'm going to be telling you about is you have to fall off this cliff and dash at just the right time to get onto this moving platform so you can jump to safety. Also, I'm hoping to add checkpoints in the next devlog so that if you die you don't have to start the level completely over. After that you run into the old man again, but this time he's in distress. After you save him, he gives you an iron sword and tells you how to use it. And that's the end of the tutorial. After that you just get to move on to the full game. Also, I added this castle at the end of each level so that there's something there and you don't just like walk off screen and the level just mysteriously ends. And I also updated the menu to use the new trees and all that. So many of you are probably wondering now why it took me 4 months to finish the tutorial. Well, I am too. No, I'm kidding, I know why. It comes down to just plain underestimating how much work it would be. For some reason when I started, I thought it would only take a month to finish it, believe it or not. But I ended up needing more content for the game because it felt very empty, and I also remade the graphics a few times, and blah 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 blah. So it just ended up being a ton more work than I expected. Also, I'm gonna change the schedule to devlog every 2 months. I'm gonna try to get it out every month, but it's more than likely gonna be every 2 months because I just have so much work to do on Quest, it's like impossible to get it all done in 1 month. So thanks for watching, subscribe, like if you liked the video, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!